I consider the tragedy of 9/11 to be a total failure by the U.S. government. Our elected officials must make it their number one priority to keep America safe from terrorism and international criminal groups. Being switched on is a daily decision, a moment-by-moment choice, a constant awareness and mindset. It is a coat of armor that protects you from all types of threats in all aspects of life. We need to read the people in front of us, behind us, on the phone, and online. There could even be a time when being switched on could save your very life. Seek balance, keep faith, family first, walk and live with purpose, and remember, remain switched on.
Switched On, the heart and mind of a special agent, is available now on Amazon or at switchedonlife.com.
Hi friends, Susan Bafford here, excited to share with you about Sotoderm HGH Gel. If you're looking for a better night's sleep, having a better mood, more energy, brain clarity, healthier hair, skin, and nails, increased libido, decreased body pain, this is a product for you. I have never seen anything in one bottle do more things. We actually call it liquid gold. So get a hold of me, DM me at Susan Bafford here on Twitter. I am so excited to share with you more of our testimonials. There's over 40 benefits that this product can do for you and your family. I hope you're having an amazing day. Take care.
And a good afternoon, everyone. Chris McDonald with the Mac Files broadcast. We're very honored this afternoon to have a good friend of ours, Brett Tolman. He's a former U.S. attorney during the Bush years, and he was also the attorney that prosecuted the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping case. And but we brought him on today to talk about the Bob Mueller probe that has come to an end. I wanted to get Brett's legal expertise. I have a lot of respect for Brett, and he's been on several shows, and he's a vital part of the Washington community still. And Brett, it's good to have you, buddy. It's always a good time. You know, since you've been here, I've become a grandpa, but our audience has also tripled, almost quadrupled. So a lot of people don't know who you are, and I'm glad to introduce them to you today. And I'm just thankful to have you on the show, but it's good to have you, friend.
Great to be with you, Chris. Appreciate it. I'm glad you're still out there kicking and digging up, you know, a lot of details that need to be explained.
We're trying, buddy. We're doing our best. And, you know, that grandbaby, and I understand you just had a recent granddaughter. They're a week apart. So congratulations on your new one. And the difference in me and Brett, mine has turned my hair gray already. Brett's got that young black hair. Look at him. He don't look like a day over 30. Chris looks like he's 80 years old already. So that's the difference in the grandpas here. But congratulations on your newborn.
Thank you. You too.
Listen, you know, all this came to an end last week with the Mueller probe. It had sort of been rumored that after Bob Barr took over. And Bob Barr, I'm sure you know Bob because you were part of the same president with the Bush. He was a Bush appointee as well. And Brett, I have to tell you, I was on the fence at first. I'm just going to be brutally honest with you. I was on the fence with Barr at the beginning, simply for the fact of with the past history of the Bushes and the Trumps. And look, that's not something that's breaking news here on the Mac Files, that the Bushes were not the biggest fans of Donald Trump and still may not be. But it just was weird to me to have President Trump go into the past and pull out former Attorney General of George H.W. Bush, who was not the biggest fan. And I don't want to get into all the reasons why I feel like that happened. But I have to tell you, I feel like that there seems to be a sense that the Justice Department is functioning again. And I have to tell you, from a person that loves the law and loves our country, I'm relieved to see that. And I'm proud to see that, because we have to have a pure system of justice for everybody to feel good about the country again.
Right.
And I just feel like he was a big reason why this Mueller probe was. I feel like he may have went to Bob Mueller immediately and said, look, you know, if you don't have any proof of this stuff, let's wrap it up. You know, we don't need to keep dragging the American people and the president through this without some kind of closure. Let's get it done. That's just my take.
I think AG Barr is an interesting selection, and I always like the selection, and here's why. I knew that Bill Barr is a man that likes to follow rules. And there are some rules in the Department of Justice that can serve to protect the integrity of the institution. I'll give you an example. When he was in his confirmation hearing, they pressed him. You saw a lot of the Democrats pressing him. Will you make the report public? And will you recuse on Russia? And you look at his response, it's very, very interesting. First, he said, I make the decision on a recusal and me alone. And they pressed him. Would you follow the advice of those attorneys in the Department of Justice on recusal? And he said, I'll listen to it, but I will make the decision. I think that's probably what President Trump liked about him. He would not be afraid to utilize his position, not that he would do something inappropriate, but that he would have the strength and the knowledge and the ability to lead that Sessions didn't have, quite frankly, because he probably had some insecurity about what are the rules.
Right.
That's not the case with Barr.
No.
And when it came to Mueller, he was very clear. He said, this is the process. And you look, he did it. I will get the report. I will provide a summary to Congress. I will decide what will be made public to Congress or to the public in general. And that's it. And that's what he's doing. Now, the big question, and what we ought to also discuss, is the difference between the Russian investigation and the obstruction of justice, and why did they come out a little bit, in different ways in the letter that was provided by Barr to Congress?
I would like to talk about that. And it was striking that they didn't draw a conclusion on the obstruction part. That was left to Bob Barr. Bob Barr came out and said, look, me and Rod Rosenstein have looked at the evidence. Based upon what we've seen in the special counsel's report, we have concluded that because there was not any Russia collusion, in other words, the president didn't commit a crime with the Russian collusion, that's what the findings said, that there was really no way he even could obstruct justice, because in actuality, he's not obstructing a crime. And Brett, let's just be honest with you. It was a political, the Democrats were mad as hell because they fired Comey, who was their hitman. And look, and I say that because things are coming out now that we didn't know. Look, the last time me and you talked was probably the spring or late summer, maybe of 2018. Right. Even since that time, the revelations that have come out with the FBI and the text messages and the emails and, all the questions about the Hillary Clinton server, why wasn't that investigated right? It has exploded. It's changed the discourse of this discussion. And all along, it was like, I think most people out here in real America, we were just like, you've got a president under investigation for something that 99.99% of people in America knew wasn't true. We did. And I mean, we knew it wasn't true, but we couldn't do nothing about it because, again, every time we would turn on our television at night, it was like, if President Trump stops this investigation, he's finished, he's out, he's impeached, he's gone. And then you watch these other actors do the thing they're doing that was illegal.
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
You look at obstruction. You look at obstruction. What they had to analyze, and a lot of people don't realize this is not just one statute in the federal system. There are dozens of obstruction of justice statutes. And you're right. You hit on a really important part that the media isn't focused on. Mueller was probably faced first and foremost with the fact that I didn't find any conspiracy. That's the ultimate crime, was there a conspiracy with Russia?
Right.
Didn't find that. So how can I find then that there's obstruction? And what was he looking at? He was looking at the firing of Comey. He was also looking at the tweets. He was looking at some of the discourse between the president and individuals in the FBI. At that point, yes, he does say it. I'm not finding that it incriminates him, but I also don't find that it exonerates him. One of the big points is what you brought up, and that is the Department of Justice rarely, if ever, and I cannot think of a time, granted I don't have the longest memory, but I have a pretty good memory of the Department of Justice. I cannot remember a time in which obstruction of justice was brought when they could not find the underlying crime
right.
that they could obstruct. But setting that aside, you also have a very interesting issue with obstruction, that can a sitting president who's asserting his innocence, can he, as the head of the executive branch, can he direct those in the executive to get rid of what he believes is an inappropriate investigation? Now, most of us would say that would be unseemly. We wouldn't want the president to say, hey, get rid of that investigation, because that feels wrong. I never saw any evidence that suggested that that's what the president did, even though that may be what he wanted.
I'll agree with you there. And Brett, I think what he wanted ultimately, I think there was at some point in this that he knew the end game was coming. And I think that he knew in his heart that this was actually going to benefit him, because look, the Democrats, no matter what they're out there saying now, they cannot say that President Trump impeded Mueller. They cannot be out there saying he fired Mueller. They cannot say that he did this, he did that. Rod Rosenstein himself went before Congress months ago, and they asked him point blank, has the president done anything to you to hinder this investigation? On record, Rod Rosenstein said, no, he hasn't. And they even, the 25th Amendment, that fiasco came up, and even Rod Rosenstein said, I'm telling you, I didn't say that to McCabe like it was presented. But I can tell you now, knowing what I know about President Trump and working with the man, the 25th Amendment is not in play here. So he himself said, look, there's been no effort by the White House to hinder this.
And I think that Barr was smart to consult the Deputy Attorney General.
I do too.
I think if there was someone in the department that might want to recommend obstruction, I could see Rod wanting to, because I think he has some distaste over several issues with the president.
Sure.
That should give you even more credibility in terms of the decision that was made. But why did Bob Mueller not make a recommendation on obstruction and leave it to the Attorney General? I just simply put this out there. If you can't find the conspiracy, the evidence of the conspiracy, do you want to be the special investigator that took it on your shoulders to recommend that the president be charged with obstruction of justice when you couldn't find the underlying conspiracy? I think you would defer that to the Attorney General every time.
Absolutely. Britt, do you think there needs to be a special counsel now appointed? Because now it's like the shoe has been flipped, because now you've got people like Lindsey Graham, Devin Nunes, and other people in Congress, voices in Congress, and Chris McDonald, actually, another voice that believes we need to do this. But I know that the problem is this: it can't look like that you're just getting revenge for 2.5 years of crap. You've got to do it right. Do you think a special counsel is needed to go back now and investigate the investigation?
I'll tell you how I would do that and get it done. Horowitz report is important.
Yes.
The IG is investigating some issues that do touch on the FBI and Hillary Clinton and the emails and some of those issues. Now, I know John Huber has been tasked with taking a look at that. Perhaps he'll have a report and recommendation, but what I would do is I would take that Horowitz report when it comes out, and I'd allow that to be the basis for putting a special prosecutor. You've eliminated some of the politics. The Inspector General is respected by both sides, both parties. So if he finds some things that do give you that leeway, I think that's a move that would be smart. And I've long said, if somehow you could do it without the politics ruining the validity of it, then it needs to be done, because I think Hillary Clinton has escaped review and scrutiny of what were perhaps some of the most offensive conduct, that the Department of Justice, I think, has some great frustration at how it was handled by Jim Comey.
I'll agree with that. And we've asked this question to you before, but again, we've got a brand new audience. But I do want to ask you a question. Barr and Sessions are night and day to me. And again, Sessions just didn't seem to have the will. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was something going underneath. I know a lot of people think that him and Trump were talking every night and this was all a grand plan. I'm just not one of them. I just don't. I just believe it was just Jeff Sessions just didn't have the willpower to do what's right. And Barr seems to me to be a lot different. I mean, it's like you said, he's a rules guy. He wants the law upheld, and I love that about him. And I look, all AGs, Brett, all politicians, President Trump even. Everybody's going to make mistakes in this. Nobody's perfect. And there's going to be bumps. There's going to be things Barr does I may not like, but I still like the man. I do. I like his tenacity so far for the law, because I have to tell you, buddy, you're a U.S. attorney, former U.S. attorney, and you practice the law every day. As a citizen, that is one of the most frustrating things I've seen over the last probably 8 to 9 years, that the rule of law has been trampled. And I'm going to talk about another case with you here in a minute. But we out here in America, that's where we're screaming, Brett, in our head, that there's a set of laws, it seems, for one group of people in D.C. And then we out here in the John Q. public that just go to work every day, support our families, and do our thing. We have to abide by the law. And if we do the same things, if even a remote inkling of some of that stuff, we're in federal prison for life.
Yeah, I think that's, touching on the Sessions versus Barr thing is important. It still needs to be remembered. I have a lot of respect for Jeff Sessions, but I think he's a far better senator than he was an AG, which is in some ways disappointing because he was the former U.S. attorney in Alabama. He did have a track record of bringing cases and understanding the Department of Justice, but that was decades earlier. I think he became more of a politician, and that's not who you want heading the Justice Department. So when Barr comes in, he's not a politician.
That's right. That's a great point.
He's a rule following, and he's tough, but he also, I think, maintains decision making without the influence of politics. And I know I'll get my Democrat friends will be upset at that and say that's not true because he's a Washington D.C. guy. But there's a difference. You look at the difference between Mueller and Comey. Comey's a political animal. Mueller doesn't want leaks, doesn't want to influence politically fired individuals he thought, might be too political. You get both types in Washington, D.C. And I get what you say, John Q. Public is out there saying, look, why is there a double standard? I'll tell you why there is, quite frankly, and that is because power breeds corruption.
Good point.
You're looking at one of the most powerful, cities and towns in the world. And if we don't believe that there is corruption going on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, then we're not going to be able to, fix the system to begin with.
Do you think that, and I really appreciated what you said a while ago, why President Trump picked him, and I think that was a great analysis of why he picked him. Do you think that there was any pause that maybe Bush 43 may have suggested Barr to him? Because there's a lot of rumors going around that at the funeral, that conversation that was had, and I know we don't know precisely what was said here at that meeting. I didn't have a microphone there, so I don't know. But there's a lot of people that did surmise that Bush 43 had a lot to do with this. That he basically told President Trump, he said, "Look, I'm tired of what's going on myself, and look, this is the man. If you want to clean this mess up, if you want to clean the deep state out and get rid of this stuff, this is who you need to pick." I'm just curious if you have any insight.
I've heard some stories. I've not heard that it was 43 that recommended, but I have heard stories that there were messages sent to the White House that you've got to get the Department of Justice, fixed, and it's got to be immediate. And whoever did recommend it, or whether he saw something in the interviewing process that he liked about Barr, I would say that if you asked, and I don't know that this ever occurred, and he denied that it ever occurred, but his response on the recusal issue was a perfect snapshot of who William Barr is.
Gotcha.
It's not going to be told by a politician, and he's not going to feel pressure by a politician. And that alone would be what you wanted in as Attorney General. And it's funny because John Ashcroft, despite being an Attorney General, did have some of that and a lot more of that than Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions' recusal, to me, still baffles me. I cannot understand. If Jeff Sessions met with a couple of Russians during his time as a senator, that happens. It does. I understand the recusal in that instance. He knows something we don't know. But that was what was perhaps the death knell of the president being able to have a somewhat peaceful first 2 years of his administration.
Brett, this is a personal question on two fronts. You know Bob Mueller, you've worked with him and you've dealt with him. What do you think how do you think he's feeling today? I mean, I know he's got to be relieved to get out of this mess, but I do want to ask you about the group of men that he picked at first. Did you think that was Mueller that put all those Democrats in that pile of investigation? Because that seemed to be the biggest knock on him. And look, I've heard mixed, I've heard things about Mueller, that he's a patriot. He's going to do it by the law. He's going to do everything. And look, as the smoke clears, it turns out that he was. I mean, he did act like a patriot. It wasn't that he went after, he didn't find anything. He wrote that in his report, didn't draw a conclusion on obstruction, but it did stink for a while of all of these swamp creatures in D.C. of the Democratic side, and not one Republican, not one Trump supporter. And it did seem like a witch hunt to me. And I'm just curious, from Brett Tolman's perk, how do you feel about all that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll give you my answer. And I will tell you that I thought a lot about this, but my thinking on it was influenced by my knowledge and my interaction with Bob Mueller. And if you've ever read a book called Team of Rivals about Abraham Lincoln, this book talks about how he selected rivals, those that politically hated and despised him, to fill top and important seats in his cabinet. I see it more like that. Lincoln did that because he wanted to avoid, it was in some ways keep your enemies close, closer than your friends, but it was different than that. It was more like what Bob Mueller, I think, was thinking, which is, I'll select some people and I'll have a good cross section of those that might be conservative or liberal, but are committed to doing the right job. And in the end, it might help, and it might be what saves the integrity of the investigation, because nobody can argue that they didn't have individuals that certainly would find, a conspiracy with Russia if they could.
Right.
That works out. Had it not worked out, I'm sure it would have been the Achilles heel to this investigation for Bob Mueller for the rest of his life. But I do see him very much like Abraham Lincoln in that he would be thoughtful. He would want a cross section of individuals. He would not want to do sort of what Starr did, which was the opposite. He brought in very conservatives and it always knocked the validity of the investigation or the integrity of the investigation. Mueller, I think in the end, you asked what is he feeling? What is he thinking? I think in the truest sense, he may be one of the more patriotic people I know. And I think he feels like he did his duty to his country.
And at the end of the day, Brett, I may not have felt that when this started, but I do now. And I think as this investigation has gone on, I've realized that he was more of a tool of the left, that all this stuff was political. Like, it was a political hit job, man. Yeah. I mean, when you get down to it, that's what it was. I mean,
it really was. You look at the Steele dossier, you look at McCabe, you look at Strzok and Page, and you look at what was going on. There's no question they did not want Donald Trump, and they were going to use the power and ability they had to do it to try to pull him down. That Steele dossier right now, to me, still is one of the most offensive things, because I worked on the Patriot Act and the FISA court rules, and I saw firsthand the supposed integrity that system is to have, and the reassurance that we received that it would never be used to go after an American citizen who wasn't also aiding a terrorist organization. Well, guess what? They were going after an American citizen.
Right. That's right. And, President Trump wasn't the president, he would have a slam dunk $1 billion libel case right now. I mean, I'm telling you, if he wasn't the president, I mean,
and probably his children as well.
His children as well. I was about to say, not just him, but his family. Brett, that's good stuff. Hey, buddy, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on somewhat of another law issue. But the Jesse Smollett case just blew us all away here the last few days. Smollett, where charges were dropped, and there seems to be a little shenanigans in Chicago. Wow. Let me have the big one on that, legal shenanigans in Chicago. But as a U.S. attorney watching this from afar, I'm just curious what you felt like when you heard the news 2 days ago that Smollett walked into the courtroom, and that because of some community service loophole, he's walking out free man after faking a hate crime.
Yeah. I do not like mysterious dismissals. I want to see the reasons why. This one is shrouded in mystery right now. The FBI is supposedly looking at it and taking a close look. I'm torn because I think it was overcharged to begin with. I think look, charge a count or two. We know what occurred. It appears. Push the case in a thoughtful, methodical way. If you want to resolve the case in a unique way, fine. Be transparent about it. You don't have to have a long prison sentence. But when it looks like he somehow escaped justice altogether and then puts out a statement that's different than any of the versions to date, it offends justice. And so I hope that someone's looking into it, because I do not like to know that there are, mysterious or shrouded in mystery decisions that take place in cases, especially high profile cases like that.
Well, and it was a high-profile case when you get down to it. I mean, the man claimed that a bunch of Trump supporters beat him up, and it turned out it was two Nigerian dudes on a sub-below zero night in Chicago. And when they said this is Trump country, I mean, we Southerners are not the smartest bunch in the country, but we know a few things, and we know that Chicago, Illinois is not Trump country. I mean, I'm just saying,
Southerners are very smart. It's your accent that always gets you dinged. But I will tell you. I'll tell you, you're right on the money on that. I mean, it truly is a case in which none of it added up.
No.
What I don't like is, I don't like the fact that law enforcement seems to be the ones that, the last laugh was on them.
That's sad to me. It is.
And that's sad to me too, because this is why they investigated it, and they investigated it thoroughly, and they didn't want to be a laughing stock, and they didn't want to be the area where somebody could perpetrate a hoax and they bought into it, because we have a hard enough time getting people to come forward on real crime.
Brent, I was about to say that to me is the other issue of this that's not really being talked about. What happens to the next person out there that this really does happen to? What happens to the next person that there is actually a hate crime committed against, and they go before the cameras and they say, hey, this happened to me. And I know. It's just our country. It's just society. And it's just the nature of how people are. The first thing they're going to think about is that he's not telling the truth. He's not telling the truth. It's fake. All this is fake. So, and it just hurts the credibility. And I know as an attorney, you deal with witnesses like that. I mean, their credibility is everything. And if their credibility shot, I don't care if they're telling you that the sky's blue, man. It's hard to get before a jury and let the jury believe that if the credibility shot, isn't it?
Right. I think that's right. I think there were some consequences that needed to happen here. I think he needed to serve some time in a jail.
Certainly.
I think he needed to pay restitution for the cost of the investigation. I think he needed to also, whatever they wanted to work out, but there are victims in this case. And you can't pay restitution necessarily to all of those that support Donald Trump that were maligned by this. But a resolution that thinks about his need to be rehabilitated, as well as making some restitution, should have been thought of in this case. It looks like it was nothing but a dismissal of a case with an attempt to try to, to place some legitimacy on it, which my father always said, whipped cream on horse manure, it's still horse manure.
That's a Southern saying, Tolman. That sounds like that we say down here in the South. That's pretty good. That's actually, I have to remember that one. I'm going to have to write that one up and put that one on a tweet someday. I'll see how many hits I get on that one. Hey, buddy, we got about 10, 15 minutes here, 10. But listen, I want to ask you a question, just general stuff about the law, the legal place in our country right now, and going back to what you were talking about a while ago. How much damage? Who was the biggest loser in the Mueller case to you when you're looking at this in the bigger scheme of things? And hopefully we can get this thing behind us. I do believe, Brett, that the investigation needs to be looked at. I do. I believe it has to be for healing in the nation, because I don't think you can just go 2.5 years and slam the president for 2.5 years, and then all this treasonous stuff that's really going on just be winked at. But in an overarching scenario, as far as Brett Tolman's looking at, who was the biggest loser in this, and what does this do to our justice system going forward from here? What happened?
So the two biggest losers I would identify are the American people, but not for the reason a lot of people suggest. It's not the cost. It's not the delay. It's not for me, those sometimes happen, and it's not so exorbitantly expensive that we couldn't, I guess, deal with the cost. For me, it's the fact that it divided the country so significantly. We now have a Congress that is incapable of dealing with very, very important issues, and that punishes the country. And I would put the southern border as one of those. That is I've seen it firsthand. I've flown over it in planes. I've prosecuted cases. I've seen what it's bringing in, and I love, our Hispanic populations, and there are some wonderful, terrific people. But that's just one example of it ruining the ability that our executive and legislative branches, who have to deal with that problem, cannot get it done. And you see now a president that's struggling to do it, and he bears some responsibility as well. But we're going to see that issue and more because of the inability of Congress to act, to get things done. It's at an all-time low. I think that's one. The other that I would say is a victim of this is the First Amendment and the media's impact on what we as a country have traditionally and historically really valued, was the ability to hear something from the media and to understand that it's not propaganda, or to feel that it's propaganda. Right now, I talk to anybody that's out there, and they don't believe they're getting straight news. They don't believe it's not some attempt to push a political agenda. That scares me.
It does me too, Brett. Because look, the new media, like this little show right here, we're small potatoes, man, but we're getting people by the scores right now because people are telling us every day, look, we don't listen to the mainstream media anymore. We're turning to the internet. We're turning to people that at least are trying to at least make an effort to tell us the truth. I mean, that's all they want. They just want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear all this other stuff that's going on. And I think it's a trend, and it's a troubling trend because, I don't think I've got mixed emotions about the fight between the media and the president, because that's never good for a republic. It's never good for a free society. But the media has done a lot of it to themselves, Brett. A lot of it has been self-inflicted. They can scream all they want to about, the president's made us the enemy of the people. No, they've made themselves the enemy of the people by their behavior.
Yes.
And I know the president's not without, look, I'm not trying to say that everything he's done has been right in this, but I'm going to tell you, they've done a lot. They've done a lot, and they have nobody to blame but themselves, and look right in that mirror and say, that's why the American people feel about us the way they do.
The only thing I would have changed is his rhetoric on it, but his message and the substance of what he's stating about the media is accurate. And that is that it is powerful individuals behind the scenes attempting to influence our, population based on a political agenda. And he's right to call it out. It was
Absolutely.
Just rhetoric that probably could have been done better. And he's learning as well, like everybody else is in this role. And he probably was someone that there are many skills and talents that he had going into this job, but perhaps one that was the most apolitical in terms of not having been in Washington, D.C. when he took this job. But he's called people out, and that makes them, upset. And then he's created a lot of enemies. But you're right. The media has inflicted much of this on their own. And to date, I've not seen the media accept any of the.
They're still out there saying he's colluding with Russia, man. I mean, they're still out there saying it's crazy after all this. Hey, 2 quick questions, buddy. The national border security matter, where the Congress passed it, President Trump vetoed it. Of course, the House failed to override the veto, and I'm sure the Senate's going to try. But there's 16 cases in court right now where 16 states have sued the White House over this. From a legal perspective, and you can give me a personal opinion too about it, where does all that stand? Do they have a leg to stand on? I don't think they do personally, but that's Chris. You may have a little bit more insight to this legally, because I feel like the president was on solid ground in declaring this national emergency.
So I think his right and ability to declare the national emergency is unassailable. And that doesn't mean that it couldn't be challenged in terms of it's not if you challenge it based on he's exceeded the statutory authority he has, I think you lose that. If you challenge based on the fact that we don't want the president, assuming legislative powers, that's a different thing. Congress would have to pass it. And I agree with my friend, Senator Mike Lee, that we probably do need to rein in the ability of a president to bypass Congress. But damn it, Congress, do your job.
Exactly.
Doing their job, which is creating this. And it didn't start with Trump, and it won't end with him.
No, it won't.
It won't. But I do not believe that the White House is going to be reined in by a lawsuit for the president exceeding his authority under the statutes.
And that's really the bottom line, that's the only thing they can argue. They can't go up there and say, hey, we don't like Trump and we don't like the fact he's trying to close our border, so that's why it's unconstitutional. That's not why it's unconstitutional.
It's a tough case, too, because Congress did, in fact, act, and then he vetoed, and they followed the process that is in place for currently. And so it makes it even more difficult, the fact that process went forward.
Do you, you're there in Utah, and we talked about this briefly last time. Look, you all are feeling the effects of the border issue, Brett, all the way up in Utah. I mean, I have a little newspaper here in Tennessee. This show is sort of tied into our newspaper, but you know, our headlines every day, man. I see headlines every day from Utah, Colorado, states inland, that the drugs are pouring in. You know, this guy was arrested. He was a 9-time deportee, taken out of the country, brought back in. You know, $850 billion worth of meth found on them, cocaine. Look, it's not the border states that are fighting this border war. It's all of us in the middle of the country, too. And I'm sure Utah's seeing that a little bit, too, ain't they?
What a lot of people don't realize is on the border, the goal is not for those crossing the border illegally to just cross and then they're going to make, you know, they're going to make their home right there in Arizona, New Mexico, or Texas, or California. No, their intention is to get into the interior states because they have a much higher success rate blending into their communities. I had a sheriff called me up, said, hey, I need some real help. I said, what's going on? He said, well, I pulled over a U-Haul truck. There were 50 people in the back of this very small U-Haul truck. They had been in there for days and days. They had very little water, very little food. Several of them he thought might be human traffic victims. And he says, I have a 17-person capacity jail.
Oh my goodness.
What am I going to do? And ICE didn't have the resources or the ability to come down and get him. So you know what his only option was?
Release him.
Let him go.
Unbelievable.
So he let him go. Now what's hard is, I don't care if you're on the left or the right politically. On the left, you should be concerned there are victims of human trafficking in that.
Yes.
And if you're on the right, you should be concerned that there's illegal crossings and crime and drugs. And I mean, this is a national emergency. What I'm upset about is that it either hasn't been designated such earlier,
amen,
or Congress hasn't determined to do something about it, you know, previously. And I put the blame not on President Trump, not on really the executive branch. This was a legislative failing of you know, monstrous proportion.
Do you think that Congress is ever going to get the willpower to do it? I know we're getting close to the election season. Crap, we're already in the election season, Brett. And I just don't see this just being resolved anytime soon, man. And again, all this stuff is pouring in. Every border agent I talk to, everybody that has any know about the situation down there along that border, they are literally saying that it is at the breaking point. We're literally at a point where this thing is like a dam. And you know, we've tried to stick our finger in the little holes for so long, but there's so many holes now that the whole thing is about to collapse. And we've never seen this, and I hate to call it an invasion, but that's no really other word to say it, that when this invasion takes place, America's going to change like we've never seen it change. And it's not going to be pretty what it's going to turn into if that ever happens.
Yeah, I'm worried about our ability to solve it now, even more than I was before, which is sad to me because I maintained some hope. I remember flying over the border in a small plane with immigration officials, and I asked them, "What are all those you know little hills?" And they were these 15-foot by 10-foot hills just dotting the landscape along the desert. And these were where they drop backpacks off as they run through, and there were dozens and dozens and dozens of these hills of backpacks and packages that you know they've trying to bring food and stuff across. It's a problem that very few have gone and looked at closely, and when they haven't looked at it closely, they don't feel the urgency.
Well, look, it goes back to the law. If we would just uphold our law, we'd uphold the law, we wouldn't have to worry about it. And I don't mean to be ugly. Go ahead.
every president, including Democratic presidents, political leaders on both sides, up until this last election, were calling for tougher on border security, walls, more aggressive patrolling. And now the Democrats have chosen to go an entirely different way. And because of that choice, I think our ability to solve this is even less. And I see Trump having figured that out.
Yeah, and he's got to do what he's got to do, and that's why I never had no issue with the national emergency declaration. Look, it is a national declaration, and it is an emergency. And tell any angel mom out there that's lost a son or a daughter, or an angel dad, an angel brother, an angel sister, or whatever, that it's not an emergency when they've lost a child or whatever to somebody that should not have been here to begin with. And I mean, it is, to me, the cost. You mentioned the cost a while ago. Of the Mueller investigation. Look, Brett, the cost of this, the human cost of this border issue, I don't care if they spend $1 trillion to get it fixed, it still won't bring back the human the human part of this that we've lost through blood and treasure because of the violence and because of the drugs and the sex trafficking and things like that. You can't put a price tag on that, man.
That's right. That's right. And sadly, until we figure it out, that cost is going to rise.
Yeah. We're going to wrap it up real quick here. For those of you that don't know, Brett was the prosecutor in the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping case, and I'd asked him before the show, there's not really any breaking news, but I would like for you to just take about 5 minutes as we wrap this up and tell everybody there was a recent, the lady that actually was involved in the kidnapping, you were involved in prosecuting her to try to get her put away for life, and that just some things went on. Can you talk to us a little bit about 5 minutes with that, Brett, and we'll wrap this up?
Sure. There's, it's a tough thing because you have two individuals that were directly responsible for this kidnapping, Wanda Barzee and Brian David Mitchell. And Brian David Mitchell will be in prison for the rest of his life. But Wanda Barzee had a smaller sentence, and she's out and she's under supervision. But I had a colleague of mine run into her in a shopping mall, and you do realize at that moment, somebody that committed such a horrific crime is out there. I hope she's doing what she's supposed to. And, we have every confidence that she'll be supervised and monitored, and for Elizabeth's sake, but for anyone else's sake, I hope that when these folks are out, that there's, a strong rehabilitation that's occurred.
I've seen Elizabeth on some of the news media outlets. I guess she's recovering from all this now. How's she doing?
She's doing great. She's got kids, and she's phenomenal. I think she's 1 in a billion in terms of, of the strength of an individual to deal with what occurred to her.
Now, can we expect a Brett Tolman 2024 presidential run? That's my final question to you.
I'll tell you 2 reasons why. My wife says she doesn't like to behave, so that's one factor. And the second factor is I like being able to say whatever I want when I want to, and so I guess no. I'm just going to keep being an advocate.
Well, when Chris runs, I'll let you be my VP at least, and you can sort of be in the woodworks. VPs don't do nothing anyway, Brett, that's so you can sort of do your thing and do your law firm. That's great. But it's so good talking to you today. We really appreciated this time, and I know you're busy, and I really do appreciate you taking your time to chat with us. It's been good stuff. It really has, and I hope our audience, I know they've enjoyed it. We've been talking to the one and only Brett Tolman. He's a former U.S. attorney, prosecuted the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping case for the government, and he's just a friend and a great patriot of the country, and you've got a really keen insight to the law, and I appreciate that. Brett, thank you so much, buddy. Hope to see you. And let me tell you this before we leave. Yes. You're welcome anytime on the Mac Files, and we're going to have you back soon, but thank you so much for your time, and bless you out there in Arizona. Stay safe, my friend.
Thanks so much.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Julie Lavender, the author of Mrs. Amazing in the Seed, a book for kids around 9 to 14 and adults. It's an adventure about a family that dares to be different and refuses to be indoctrinated. Go to mrsamazing.com and learn all about it and the 28-day experience. Use code WONDER for $5 off, or order at Amazon, and do leave a review for Mrs. Amazing and the Seed.
Hello, my name is Stacy Shiflett, the author of the brand new book, Wolves Among Lambs, my story of sexual abuse and cover-ups in the church. After much prayer, God has finally allowed me to tell my story. As a 17-year-old young man, I was sexually assaulted in my sleep by a Bible college student. He pled guilty to his crime and served time in prison. Later, as a young preacher on staff at a church in the greater Atlanta area, I was groomed and propositioned by my pastor. This book is my story of how God helped me through those times of difficulty. Also in the book, I give a behind-the-scenes look at the scandal that broke in our church last year that made national headlines. I talk about the way it affected our church, and I talked about the IFB politics that surrounded that event. In this portion of the book, I deal with things such as the IFB mafia and cronyism. I talk about the hypocrisy in many of our churches, among many of our preachers. In the second half of the book, I entitled that section, Restoring Our Credibility. I talk about false accusations, what to do when allegations surface. We talk about implementing policies of transparency and just common sense ways that you and I, as Christians, can prevent sexual abuse and cover-ups in our churches. The book concludes with a couple of chapters written specifically for victims of sexual abuse, where it is my prayer that through God's marvelous grace, they can find the courage to tell their story if they've not done that already, and also find ultimate healing through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The book is 400 pages and is guaranteed to change the way we look at these situations. You can buy the book either at Amazon or on our website, wolvesamonglambs.com. Also on the website, wolvesamonglambs.com, is a contact form where you can reach out to me with a question or your feedback about the book. We hope and pray that God uses this book to help purge our churches of this horrible epidemic of sexual abuse and cover-ups, and also to provide healing for victims and families of victims that have been touched and impacted by sexual abuse.
And a good evening, everyone. Chris McDonald on this Thursday night, March the 28th, 2019. We're glad to have everybody on our Final Thoughts segment. Just want to say thank you to everybody for being a great chat room tonight. Great guest and Brett Tolman. We were going to have Mike Jaffe on, and I did the interview with Brett today, and I just absolutely felt led as the afternoon progressed. I was going to run Brett as a special this afternoon, and then I realized President Trump was going to be on the rally tonight in Michigan, and I figured we'd have a very low audience. We tried to run Zach Hubbard a special with him today, and we had like 8 viewers, and I was like, what's going on here today? And realized President Trump was speaking, so we dished Zach and dished everything this afternoon, and then we decided to run Brett tonight. That was a powerful interview. I hope you enjoyed what Brett had to say about the law and the legal ramifications of the Mueller probe. You don't get too much deeper insight to something like this than a former U.S. attorney who has prosecuted some very, very high-level cases, including the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping case. I don't know if you caught it, but Brett also worked hand in hand, I should say, with the Bush administration back in the early 2000s on the Patriot Act that basically helped eliminate a lot of the bureaucracy between the CIA, the FBI, and all these agencies, that this deadlock that led to these agencies not sharing information together. And Brett was very, very instrumental in getting that roadblock moved to where now the FBI, the CIA, the district attorneys, all the U.S. attorneys, all these can share information if there's terrorism threat of some sort like that. And I really salute Brett for that. He's a great patriot, and we were just so honored. It's been a while since we've had him on the show, and a lot of it's been he's been so busy and so in need and in Washington. Yes, it is there, friend. It is very important, and so forth. And I just want to salute Brett tonight. Thank him so much for a great chat. I hope you enjoyed it. And we're very honored to have him tonight. And he'll be back soon, very soon, as well. And he had agreed. He told me after the show he does agree to be my vice president. He don't want to run for president, but if I run, he said that he'll be my vice presidential candidate. So look for McDonald Tolman coming to a campaign near you sometime, probably in the next 50 years, probably, when me and Brett are pretty drunk and we figure it's worth getting our butts, creamed in an election. That would probably not last too long. But anyway, I have to say that sort of tongue-in-cheek. But it was a good interview tonight, and we appreciate Brett coming on the show. Folks, I want to just wrap this up. A few things. I want to mention Jesse Smollett today on our Final Thoughts segment, and then I got a personal note or two to share with you all tonight. But I heard something today that was very disturbing to me, and just it really angered me, what I heard out of his lawyer's mouth. I don't know if you heard what came out of the attorney's mouth that represented him today when she basically told, I think it was either MSNBC or NBC, that Jesse had suffered more by this character assassination of the police department, of the Chicago Police Department, since they I wouldn't say acquitted him, this corrupt DA in Chicago, this Kim Fox, who needs to be in jail herself, basically just walked in and found a loophole in the law regarding community service, and she basically let him off the hook. But the lawyer goes on television today and says that Jesse suffered more at the hands of the police than he did the quote-unquote perpetrators that beat him up. And they're still lying about this. I mean, folks, this is insanity. I mean, you've got a guy that there's overwhelming evidence that he paid 2 Nigerians to beat the hell out of him, and he's still claiming that there were 2 white perpetrators that did this. I mean, this is the insanity of our justice system, and it's what I was trying to talk with Brett about, that's what we out here in the public are screaming about right now. It is celebrity privilege. It's liberal privilege. And I found a meme, it's on our timeline today on Twitter, that him and Hillary Clinton were side by side. And if you look at what happened with Jesse, and you look at what happened with Hillary, it's almost identical. You had overwhelming evidence of their guilt. You had an overwhelming evidence that they had committed the crimes they did. The media took their side and basically vilified anybody that was accusing them of the crime. They got off scot-free by a corrupt justice system, and they got that smirk. He's got the smirk on his face tonight. Hillary's got the smirk on her face. But I'm telling you this, folks, tonight, justice is coming. We got our new little justice thing that you just saw. That'll be our intro to our Mac Justice show. And I know Sherry's in the chat room tonight. And I really appreciate Sherry Wassell. And we really enjoy doing those justice shows. But I'm telling you that little tagline at the bottom that said, justice is coming. Justice is coming. And President Trump was very wise today to reopen this case. And he basically told the reporters today that he's ordered the FBI and he's ordered the Department of Justice to look into this case and look into the handling of it. And I think that is a very wise decision. And I really appreciate President Trump doing that. And I just hope the feds take up the mantle where the state of Illinois failed America. It took a slap at the Trump supporters. It's a travesty of justice. I'm very upset. You should be upset tonight, folks. Look, this is the whole argument. This is the whole thing me and Brett were talking about a little bit. You can't have 2 sets of justice, and that's what we feel like out here in Middle America. We feel like that there's a set of justice for us out here. Because if any of you in this audience tonight, and me included, would have done this, we wouldn't have been getting off scot-free. There would have been no DA walking into the courtroom and trying to find a loophole to get us off this crime. We would have probably been in jail as of this hour. I'd have been doing this scope to you from bars. And I'm telling you, it's frustrating. And this kind of stuff has got to stop. And I'm just praying that Bill Barr has the bravery and the courage to clean it up. And we'll just see how this is all handled down the road. This is a story to follow, and I do believe that, as I said, justice will be done. I've got a great lineup coming up next week. We've done some interviews at the end of this week. We've not been able to air all the shows, but I'm telling you, whatever you do, stay with the Mac Files broadcast over the next week or so. We've got the great Liz Crokin. We've got Corey Daniel coming back. Corey's going to de-occult the Christ Church shooting that happened a few weeks ago, week and a half ago. And tomorrow, by the way, we'll celebrate the 2-week birthday of my little grandson. He'll be 2 weeks old tomorrow, and he's doing well. But it was the same day on the 15th, sadly, that this Christ Church shooting took place in New Zealand. You don't want to miss what Corey has to say. And he also talks about the connection between the Stoneman Douglas suicides and the suicides related to Sandy Hook. And he gets really, really intriguing deep at the end. You don't want to miss this interview. Corey may be on tomorrow night. That may be our Friday night show. We got Liz Crokin coming up next week. We've got Stacy Shiflett, the gentleman you heard on this book about Wolves Among Lambs. You don't want to miss that interview. We got Tiffany Fitzhenry coming back with us. We have got the one and only Tamara Lee coming back with us, and a lot of other guests and a lot of other surprises coming as we enter this new week. Ricky Wilson will be with us Sunday night Faith Chat. You don't want to miss Ricky as well. We got Pirate Radio coming up tomorrow night. So whatever you do, stay with us, and we will just appreciate you joining us on the Mac Files. Folks, as I say goodnight tonight, I just want to say something. Look, I had to say some things last night that I really, truly, in the biggest, deepest recesses of my heart, I hate saying things that I had to say last night regarding chat behavior in the room. And I slip on it tonight, and I wanted to just say this to you tonight as we leave. I love every one of you guys. I don't want you to feel like you got to walk on eggshells in the chat room. The basic fundamental thing I was trying to get across last night is just when you're in the chat, please put yourself in the place of the guest and just respect the guest in the chat. I'm not telling you not to chat. I'm not telling you not to talk to each other. That's all fine and good. But just remember, just put yourself in the place of the guest and respect the guest and the show. We're fine. We're not angry at anybody. I was sort of watching some of the comments last night, and people thought we were trying to single somebody out. We're not trying to single anybody out. We weren't trying to single individuals out. We were talking in a general scope. I'm more upset about the public stuff than I am the chat room stuff. I can tell you that. I've said it over and over again. If you have a problem with our show, just please come to us with it. We're not untouchable. We're not unapproachable. We're not the Pope. We're not sitting in an ivory tower. I'm just Chris McDonald. And I'm a good guy. I'm a friendly guy. And if you got a serious problem with the show, I'm going to take it. And if it's worthy of us changing something over and I feel like we need to address it, it'll be addressed. If I feel like it's just a petty thing, we're not going to depart as enemies. I'll deal with it as I seem appropriate. But again, that's the main thing. As the old saying in the Karate Kid goes, Miyagi is not perfect, and Chris is not perfect either. And sometimes Chris has to let off a little steam. And I think this thing had just reached a point last night I felt like I needed to address it because we've had a lot of chirping lately publicly about stuff that really don't matter to a hill of beans. This guest we had tonight, Brett Tolman, epitomizes the kind of people we're trying to bring to you. We want to keep you informed of what's going on with the law. We want to keep you informed what's going on with the country. We want to keep you informed what's going on in the world of faith, the world, things that we know that you probably won't hear anywhere else, the attempts to take down this pedophilia, this child sex trafficking stuff. And some of these guests that we've got, folks, they're going to be bringing you some information that's going to be graphic and rough, and you're just going to have to get a little tough and not be a snowflake when they talk and speak. And yes, there may be a few cuss words that circulate in the show. And it's not that we, wake up every morning, and again, like I say about Pirate Radio, me and James don't wake up on Friday morning and write out a narrative to say we're going to say, so many. We don't know what we're going to say from night to night, week to week. But we just love you. I want to say that going out tonight. Last night was not about anybody in particular. It wasn't about anything in particular. But we're just asking you to be courteous. That's really the main thing, and have manners. And I think that that's not asking too much from a host that loves you with all his heart to be doing this every day. And it's not about me, it's about you all. We're doing this for you. And God has placed us in a place that He's allowed us to do it. And as long as He'll give us the grace to do it, we're going to be here. This is our life right now. We're not doing anything else. We have a little small tent-making job in photography, but this is our calling. This is our life. This is my job. And I look at it as that. I look at this as my future endeavor. And the way I look at it, I'm doing this until God tells me not to do it no more, or He takes me out. And I'm committed to doing this, and I'm doing it the right way. And whether it's on Periscope or wherever it may be, the Mac Files will go on, and the information is going to be given. That was all I was trying to say last night. And if I offended anybody, I do apologize. It wasn't meant to be offensive. It was just meant to be a plea to be courteous to your fellow chat room goers. Be courteous to the show. Be courteous to our guests. That's all. And we do love you guys. We appreciate you. Listen, paypal.me/themacfiles, patreon.com/themacfiles. We could use your financial help. Got some expenses that we really need to help meet right now, and the show needs that as well. And we need sponsors. If you're a business and you know some business people that believe in what we're doing and you think they would like to get on and have an ad like we've had on tonight, please contact us, because we'll be glad to set something up with you. And we'd love to talk about you here on the Mac Files each night. And we're working on some spots for some new people that are coming on board, and Chris has got to get that done. All righty. It's 11:05. I've talked enough. Hope you've enjoyed Brett Tolman tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Love you guys. See you tomorrow night. More than likely, we're going to have Corey Daniel on tomorrow night. This thing with the Christ Church was riveting today when I interviewed Corey. And I tell you, I'm still chewing on it, because some of the stuff he said at the end has really been disturbing. And you don't want to miss this tomorrow night, because he's going to be talking about a little bit the suicides, again, between the Sandy Hook and the Stoneman Douglas High School where the Parkland shooting took place. And there's a lot of correlation between the two. And but then when he starts occulting what took place in Christ Church, you're going to find that very powerful as well. And that's why we bring Corey Daniel on. And then next week, all-star lineup of folks that you don't want to miss. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless this great nation of America. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Thank you for being part of the Mac Files family. You are our family. You're not just chat goers. You're not just chat people that come in every night and say hello to us. You're my family. I love you. I appreciate you. Good night, everybody. God bless.